travel through grief. There are certain words that can sound harsh until we understand what they are protecting. Words like boundary, limit, no, stop, enough. Those words may feel uncomfortable, particularly when we have spent much of our lives being available, dependable, accommodating, and concerned about what everyone else needs. But a boundary is not necessarily a wall built to keep a world away. Sometimes it is a shoreline. It marks the place where one thing ends and another begins. It tells us what belongs inside our care and what must remain outside our responsibility. And just as a coastline needs to be watched and protected, our emotional lives need guardianship too. Today is August 4th, which is recognized as Coast Guard Day. The date honors the beginning of what eventually became the United States Coast Guard. On August 4th, 1790, President George Washington signed legislation authorizing the construction of 10 vessels that would enforce tariff and trade laws and help prevent smuggling. What began as a small system of cutters developed over time into the modern Coast Guard, a service associated with maritime safety, protection, law enforcement, navigation, and rescue. Its motto, Semper Paratus, means always ready. When I think about the Coast Guard, I think about people watching the horizon. I think about lighthouses, patrol boats, rescue crews, sometimes rough water, uncertain weather, and someone remaining alert when other people are not even aware that danger may be nearby. Their work is not about stopping people from enjoying the water. It is about helping create the conditions in which people can travel, work, explore, and return home safely. The Coast Guard is present because the water can change. Storms can arrive, equipment can fail. People can become lost. What looked calm when the journey began may not remain calm forever. Grief can feel like that too. We may begin a day believing we are on steady ground and then encounter an anniversary, a photograph, a song, a familiar smell, maybe a piece of mail, or just a casual question that changes the emotional weather. We can be functioning reasonably well one moment and suddenly feel as though we have been pulled into deeper water. That does not mean we have failed. It means grief is not entirely predictable. Healing, therefore, requires more than courage. It requires awareness. It requires us to recognize changing conditions and respond before we become completely overwhelmed. Boundaries are one of the ways we do that. Many of us were taught to think of boundaries as something we impose on difficult people. We can imagine a confrontation, a dramatic declaration, or a relationship being cut off. Occasionally, a firm separation is necessary. But most boundaries are quieter than that. A boundary, it may be deciding not to answer the telephone during dinner. It may be waiting until tomorrow to respond to an email message. It may be attending part of an event instead of staying for the entire thing. I have quite a few friends who have been doing that lately, and it is working for them. It may be saying, I am not ready to talk about that. It may be choosing not to explain your grief to someone who has already demonstrated that they do not want to understand it. A boundary may simply be the recognition that you've just reached your limit. After loss, we often discover that our old limits no longer apply. Before grief, we may have been able to work all day, attend an evening event, answer everyone's message, and begin again the next morning. But I'm here to say, after grief, one difficult conversation may use most of the energy we have available. And then, a trip to the grocery store may feel strangely exhausting. A family gathering may require preparation before it and recovery after it. Think Thanksgiving, you all. We may judge ourselves because we believe we should be able to do what we did before. Other people may also expect the previous version of us to return. But grief changes our internal landscape. The shoreline has shifted. Now, that does not mean it will always feel exactly as it does today. It does mean we must respect the conditions that exist now. A good captain does not navigate according to yesterday's weather report. A rescue crew does not ignore the waves because the water was calm last week. They respond to what is actually happening. Healing asks us to do the same. You may have heard people say that we need to set boundaries, but setting a boundary is only part of the work. We must also be willing to guard it. A boundary that we repeatedly abandon when someone becomes disappointed, that's not yet protecting us. We may announce that we need rest, but then agree to another obligation because we feel guilty. We may tell someone that a subject is painful, but then allow them to continue the conversation because we don't want to appear rude. We may promise ourselves that we will leave an event when we become tired, but then we remain for 2 additional hours because everyone else seems to be having fun. This is where the idea of being always ready becomes useful. Being ready does not mean living in fear or preparing for disaster at every moment. It means knowing what we will do when the conditions change. It means noticing our own warning signals. Perhaps your body becomes tense before a mind recognizes that a conversation is becoming too much. Maybe your shoulders rise, your stomach tightens, your breathing changes, or you begin to feel trapped. Perhaps you become unusually quiet. Maybe you start agreeing to things simply because you want the conversation to end. Those signals are information. They are like lights on a navigation panel. They are not inconveniences to be ignored. They are part of the system trying to guide you. We often wait until we are completely depleted before giving ourselves permission to stop. We believe rest must be earned through exhaustion. We think we must prove that we tried hard enough, stayed long enough, or gave enough before we can choose ourselves. But the purpose of a boundary is not to rescue us only after we are drowning. It is also meant to keep us from moving too far into dangerous water. Now, a healthy boundary might sound like, I would love to come, but I can only stay for an hour. It may sound like I cannot take responsibility for that. It may be, I need some time before I make a decision. It could be, please do not share that information with other people. Sometimes it is simply, no, I'm not available. That final sentence can be especially difficult for people who have built their identity around being dependable. We may worry that saying no means we are selfish, unkind, or unreliable. But there is a difference between disappointing someone and harming them. Someone may be disappointed that you cannot attend or help them, host a party, host an event, to drive their kids when they cannot, even to listen or fix or organize or provide what they wanted. Their disappointment does not automatically mean that you made the wrong decision. It may simply mean that your boundary interfered with their preference. We must also remember that grief can make us especially vulnerable to becoming the emotional caretaker for everyone else. After a death, people may come to us with their own memories, regrets, questions, and reactions. Sometimes those conversations are comforting, but sometimes they become another responsibility. I found that out after my mom's death. We may find ourselves comforting people who were less connected to the person who died. We may be expected to manage family conflict, organize belongings, make decisions, reassure children, soothe relatives, and keep everyone informed while we are also trying to understand our own loss. There may be moments when we want to do those things. There may also be moments when we simply cannot. You are allowed to say, I do not have the capacity to help you with that today. You are allowed to ask someone else to make the telephone calls. You are allowed to leave messages unanswered. You are allowed to decide that another person's crisis, it just cannot become your immediate assignment. You are allowed to protect enough energy to care for the life that remains yours. The shoreline is not rejecting the ocean by remaining the shoreline. It is simply honoring where the land ends. Boundaries can also protect our relationship with the person who died. Other people may have opinions about how long we should grieve, what belongings we should keep, even whether we should date again, or when should remove a wedding ring. Maybe it's where we should spend the holidays, or how frequently we should speak their name. Those decisions, they belong primarily to the person living the grief. Advice can be offered, but ownership, it cannot be transferred. You may appreciate someone's concern and still decline the recommendation. You may listen without obeying. You may choose a path that other people do not understand. There is also an important boundary between remembering and remaining permanently responsible for the past. I've seen that happen with daughter-in-laws, and the mother-in-law thinks that they should continue to do certain things because their son has died, or vice versa. Grief can cause us to revisit conversations and wonder what we should have said or done differently. We may believe that if we analyze events long enough, we will eventually discover the one action that could have changed everything. Reflection can help us understand our experiences, but endless self-prosecution does not bring the person back. At some point, we may need to draw a boundary around the courtroom in our minds. We can acknowledge regret without sentencing ourselves to lifelong punishment. We can say, I wish I had known then what I know now. We can make amends where amends are possible. We can allow what we have learn to influence how we live today. But we do not have to continue retrying a case for which no new evidence exists. We cannot demand that a former version of ourselves possess knowledge that only became available through the experience itself. A boundary can therefore be an act of mercy. It can separate responsibility from blame. It can separate compassion from self-abandonment. It can separate love from obligation. Remembering someone from believing that we are never allowed to experience joy again. Just as the Coast Guard performs many different kinds of work, our emotional boundaries have more than one purpose. Some help prevent danger, some guide us through uncertainty, some make rescue possible, and some protect what is valuable, and some tell us that the road ahead is unsafe. Others, it just helps us return to shore. And occasionally we do need rescue. We may realize that we have taken on too much and allowed someone to cross a line repeatedly or ignored our own distress until we are no longer managing well. That realization is not proof that we are weak. It is the moment to call for support. A friend, therapist, grief group, a spiritual leader, a doctor, a coach, or another trusted person may become part of our rescue crew. Strength is not measured by how long we can struggle alone. Sometimes, strength is recognizing that we are no longer able to reach solid ground without assistance. A lighthouse does not eliminate the storm. It helps us see where we are. A life jacket does not calm the ocean. It helps keep us afloat. And a boundary, it may not change another person's behavior. It changes the amount of access that behavior has to our life. That distinction is important because we sometimes treat boundaries as instructions that other people must follow. We tell someone not to criticize us, call us late at night, bring a painful topic, or ask intrusive questions. We hope they will respect that request. But the true boundary includes what we will do if they do not. We may end the conversation. We may stop answering after a certain hour. We may leave the room. We may share less information. And we may shorten the visit. The boundary is not merely an attempt to control someone else. It is a decision about our own participation. This does not mean every boundary must be rigid. Coastlines have harbors, and gates can open. Bridges connect two sides. We may have different boundaries with different people because trust has been built differently in each relationship. We may be willing to discuss something with one friend, but not another. We may accept help from someone who listens without taking over. We may need solitude one day and companionship the next. Healthy boundaries are not about becoming unreachable. They help us remain connected without disappearing inside the needs of others. The goal is not isolation. The goal is peace. Peace does not always mean silence or the absence of difficulty. Sometimes, peace is the knowledge that we will no longer betray ourselves to avoid an uncomfortable moment. It is knowing that we can leave when we need to leave. We can pause before answering. We can reconsider a commitment. We can choose not to enter every argument. We can allow another adult, yes we can, to manage their emotions. And we can stop confusing being needed with being loved. As you move through this week, consider where your emotional shoreline may need to be redrawn. Is there a place where you are consistently overwhelmed? Is there a responsibility that does not truly belong to you? Is there a conversation that leaves you drained every time it occurs? Is there someone who expects continuous access to your energy? Are you trying to keep everyone else comfortable while your own nervous system remains in distress? Perhaps your boundary does not need to begin with a dramatic announcement. It can begin with a pause. Before saying yes, try saying, "Let me check and get back to you." Before answering a painful question, take one breath. Be aware of your breath. Before staying longer, ask your body what it needs. Before assuming that something is your responsibility, ask, "Is this mine to carry?" You do not need to defend every shoreline. You do not have to guard every person's peace. And you do not have to respond to every distress signal as though you are the only available rescue crew. Your life deserves protection too. On Coast Guard Day, we honor those who remain ready to protect our shores, our waters, ports, and communities. And perhaps we can allow their motto to become a gentle reminder for our own healing. Being always ready does not mean anticipating every emotional storm. It means knowing that when the weather changes, we are permitted to respond. We can adjust the course. We can seek shelter. We can say no, we can rest, and we can ask for help. A boundary is not evidence that we have stopped loving. Sometimes it is what allows love to remain without resentment. It is not proof that we have abandoned other people. Sometimes it is the way we stop abandoning ourselves. And it is not a wall declaring that no one may enter. It is carefully tended shoreline that says, "This is my life. This is my energy. This is my healing. This is where I will meet you, and this is where I must protect my peace." Until next time, remember, there is no single map for grief, but there is a way through. And sometimes that way through begins by recognizing what is yours to carry, what is yours to release, and what you are finally ready to guard. If this episode connected with you, I'd love for you to follow our podcast, leave a review, or share it with someone who may need it. Those small actions truly help new podcasts like Travel Through Grief grow and reach more people. And thank you to everyone who has already listened, rated, reviewed, and supported this journey. I appreciate you more than you know. Until next time, keep finding your way forward.